Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here. I did very well in January on my 5 to 1 and I didn't buy any books and I was saving up my book credits, and then for some reason February hit and I just went a bit mental and binge bought. So I'm not going to beat myself up too much because, you know, they're only books. They're not going to cause me too much problem apart from taking up a lot of room in my house, and none of these books cost me over £3. They're all second-hand, either online or from charity shops, and I've got a couple, oh no, I've got one from a publisher. But I thought I would do a haul today of all of these books that I shouldn't have bought but I have bought and I'm going to enjoy. So there we go. So I was really lucky and I got a advanced copy of The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury from Scholastic Books. So thank you very much to them for this. This book, I believe, is actually already out now. I think it came out at the beginning of February. The main character in this is sort of an assassin of some sort. I think her touch can kill or something like that. So I'm really excited to read this and find out what it's all about. I think I've got 34 books here to show, so I'm not going to go into any depth about them. I tend to go into more depth when I'm reviewing books or when I'm doing my weekly roundups. So, but if you do want to know any more details, then feel free to ask in the comments and I will let you know anything I can. So let's start next with the one sort of middle grade young adult. I think it's more middle grade that I picked up, and this was because of Words of a Reader, and also Yamini from The Skeptical Reader has also picked this up recently, and I just loved the premise. It's Theodosia and the Serpent's Chaos. It's a book about Egypt and Sheikah. It's sort of a mystical, magical, bit of an adventure story, and it just sounds delightful, so I'm going to give this a go and I'm so excited to have got my hands on this one. Next up is the one classic that I bought. I'm desperate to read this. I've read it a long time ago and I've seen the film, but I'm desperate to read it again, and that is Little Women by Louise May Alcott. And this is a Little Collins classic edition. It was quite pretty, probably not my first choice, but it was £1 in my local charity shop and looks like it's never been read, so I had to pick that one up. Next, moving on to a couple of the more sort of adult maybe fantasy, or, you know, not proper fantasy, but the fantasy that I would class in fantasy books. This month I read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb with BookTube Reading Buddies, and I decided that I was going to pick up the other two in the trilogy. So I've now got Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest, which I know don't match, but they were under £3 and they are pretty big books and they're secondhand, so I'm not too fussed. I did enjoy Assassin's Apprentice. It was a little bit of a slower read for me and probably my first real look into adult fantasy. So I wasn't disappointed, but it certainly wasn't anything that I thought, oh my god, I must read more and more and more of these. So, but it was good enough that I wanted to continue with this series to see where it goes to. Next up is a book that I continually hear Novels and Nonsense Sam talk about, and that's Inda by Sherwood Smith. I'm really looking forward to reading this, and I know that Jenny at Jenny King's possibly reading it this month, but maybe next month, and if we're both onto it next month, maybe we'll read it together. So I'm excited about this. And then finally in the sort of fantasy is Abarat by Clive Barker, which I think this is either a YA or middle grade type fantasy, so I think this will be interesting and possibly a good way for me to get into some more fantasy. So I'm excited to read a little bit more of this, and it's a series, so if I like it I can carry on reading. Next up is the YA books that I've picked up. I'm buddy reading, or well, I will have done it by now. I've buddy read If I Stay by Gail Forman with the Book Towers, and I've really enjoyed the book. I've read it before, I think, but I wanted to reread and I couldn't remember anything that happened in it, and I wanted to see the film. So I picked up Where She Went, which is the second, is a sequel to If I Stay, so I wanted to read that straight afterwards. So by the time this video comes out I may have already read it, but I picked that one up. I picked up The Memory Keepers by Natasha Ngan, I think. I apologise, and the surname is spelled N-G-A-N. I think I've heard about this quite a long time ago. It's sort of a dystopian world, I think, where people steal, or children make their living in a future London stealing memories from people or something. Next is The Book of Blood and Shadows by Robin Wasserman. This book is about a group of teenagers, and we follow the main girl, and she goes on a night out, I think, and then everyone ends up either dead or not speaking, and they think that one of her friends is a murderer, and there's a chase to find him. And yeah, it sounds like it's got a bit of a magical element to it as well, so I'm excited to try that. Next is a book that is everywhere on BookTube at the moment, and I just hear amazing things about it, and that is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. I can't wait to read this. It is about two students, I believe, a girl and a boy, that are going to commit suicide and stop each other, and then it's about their journey from then on, I believe. But I think this is meant to be quite a powerful book, so that sounds good. Now, I know I mentioned, I think in a previous video, in my local charity shop, I think I must have a book reviewer or a publisher or somebody live locally, because I keep finding ARCs in my local charity shop, and so every time I'm in there I have a little look and see what I can find. And I was so lucky this time. I found a book I'd heard of, and it's called Lies We Tell Ourselves, and it is by Robin Talley. I've heard about this book. It's set in 1959. It's about the first black girl to go to a school of white children. I believe it's got a lesbian romance in it, or two girls, a black and a white girl, that fall in love. So I believe it's got racial elements as well as sexuality and coping with emerging feelings towards the same sex. And yeah, I'm really interested to read this. I've heard some good things, and I think maybe on Book Riot I've heard about it. So yeah, I don't think the main cover will probably look like this when it is out. Next up is What's Left of Me by Kat Zhang. I think this is about sort of one body and two people in it, and or one body and two parts of your mind, and the government wants to take half, or I think it's sort of dystopian type book. Next is Undone by Kat Clark. I had a terrible experience with Kat Clark's Torn this month, but I'd already ordered this before I did, so I'm going to go into this one with some trepidation. It wasn't expensive, so I'm not too worried, but you know, it's always worth trying a author's second book or another book by an author, because sometimes there's just a dud one and it doesn't work for you, and maybe the story of another one works better. So this one is about Jem Halliday. She's in love with her gay best friend, which isn't ideal, but she's learnt to live with it, and then unspeakably this gay best friend kills himself, and it's about her finding out why. Next up is Etherneath by Brodie Ashton. I think I heard about this first on Benjamin of Tome's channel. He really loved it. It's about a girl that's been in the underworld and gets to come back for 6 months to sort of say her goodbyes, and then she has to go back, and it just sounds interesting. Next is one that I can't wait to read. I just keep hearing wonderful things about, and that's The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I found this in my local Waterstones, so I did pay full price for this, but I did have a voucher, so I feel okay about it. And yeah, it looks like a brilliant book. Next is Clipped Wings by Helena Hunting. This is another sort of dystopian, fantastical, magical book about tattoos that do things, I think. Next up is Skin Hunger by Kathleen Dewey. Magic's been outlawed. It's sort of a magical tale. Yeah, so should be good. Afterwards by Scott Westerfeld. I believe this is about a young girl writing a book, or a young woman writing her first novel, and we see parts of the real world and her going through publishing and getting her book published, and also we are in the sort of book world as well, so the story that she's written, and everyone that's read this says it's a really interesting read. Next up is The Game by Christina Kuhn, and this is you know, set in a school book, I think, bit of a murder mystery, and looks exciting. Next is The Blessed by Tonya Hurley. 3 lost girls, 1 mysterious guy, their battle for his heart, his struggle for their souls. So it's a dystopian, fantasy, magical, paranormal book. So that is all the YA books that I've picked up. And now for the adult fiction books. I really love Jodi Picoult's books. I've read most of them, though I got her Between the Lines, which I think is one of her YA books, and she's written it with Samantha Van Leer, which may be her daughter, I'm not sure. but I believe it's about a girl who gets lost inside her stories. So there's a magical aspect to this which doesn't normally occur in her books. So that should be an interesting twist. And then I picked up Lone Wolf. This is just by Jodie Picoult on her own, and it's about a man who's in a coma, and his family have to make the decision whether they're going to turn the machines off, I think, and we look in a flashback, I think, on his life and the family dramas that have been going on. So it is We Need New Names by Noviolet Bulawayo, and I found this in my local charity shop. I'll read you the back because it's very short. It was shortlisted for the Guardian First Book Award. 10-year-old Darling has a choice, it's down or out. In a shanty called Paradise, Darling and her friends spend their days stealing guavas and singing Lady Gaga, all the while grasping at memories of life before the dreaming of escape. A dream that one day comes true for Darling, but as Darling discovers her new life in America is a far cry from what she imagined, and this new world brings with it dangers of its own. So I think it's a coming of age story about a girl that's moved from her home country to America and her coping with this move. This one I'm going to call because Jenny King made me do it. She loves Ann Patchett, and I've got State of Wonder from the library to read, but she commented in quite a few tag videos recently about Bel Canto, so I have bought Bel Canto to give a go. Next up, Basic 8 by Daniel Handler. This book is about high school senior, I think, and her last year at school, and about what ensues during that last year. Yeah, so I've heard good things, and I think it's meant to be very funny and witty. Next is Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Carol Rifka Brunt. This is about a girl who's incredibly close to her uncle, and I believe he dies, and it's about her finding out a bit more about his life and things that she didn't know about his life and coming to terms with those things. Next, a book that probably needs no introduction. That is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This sounds brilliant. It's about a couple who is teenagers in Lagos. They fall in love. The woman moves to America, I believe, and to study, and so they separate and go their different ways, and then it follows them later in life as they reconnect. The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbary. This is about a Parisian apartment block, and it's just finding out about, it's the stories about the people that live in the apartment and how they weave and interconnect together. The Universe vs. Alex Woods by Gavin Extence. I read The Mirror World of Melody Black recently and quite enjoyed it, and everyone said that they enjoyed The Universe vs. Alex Woods, so when it came up for cheap on Amazon I thought I would get a copy of it. I think it's about bullying and growing up in a single parent family and a coming of age story, so that should be interesting. Next is a book that I really should have read and haven't, and that is White Teeth by Zadie Smith. I really should have read some Zadie Smith, but I never have, so I want to give Zadie Smith a go. The Postmistress by Sarah Blake. This is set in London in the 1940s. War is broken out, war is underway, and it's about getting information, I believe, and about the postmistress. Next is another author that I haven't yet read and really should. Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings is, I think, loves this author, maybe one of her top authors, so I really want to try some of her books, and that's Sarah Waters, and I've picked up The Little Stranger. I've got a couple of her other books on Kindle, so I'm not sure which one I'll start with first, but I've heard that Sarah Waters books are great, and she actually did a talk on Sarah Waters, so if you check out her channel, which is Mercy's Bookish Musings, you can check that out if you want more information on Sarah Waters, because she's brilliant. Mercedes is brilliant and much better explaining than I ever would. And finally is Season of the Dragonflies by Sarah Creech. I can't believe I've been looking for this book for ages, and I got it in a hardback for like £2.50. It was ridiculous. This makes me think a little bit of chocolat, but with perfume and scents. So yeah, I just loved chocolat, and all of Joanne Harris's rest of the books in that series, The Lollipop Shoes, and I think another one came out as well, and I just loved it. And this just sounds absolutely magical. So this has now been a ridiculously long video, and I've obviously not explained a lot of the books in great detail because there just isn't time, but if you do want to know any more about these, or you're interested in buddy reading or anything like that, as always, comment in the comments below, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. And yeah, my name's Eleanor and I'm a book addict. Bye for now, BookTube.